Welcome to our annual State of the Municipalities event, also known as Harford Housing, a Local Outlook. My name is Ed Garono. I'm on the Legislative Committee for the Board of Realtors. I've been a realtor for 34 years. I've lived in Harford County all my life. I'm recently a 10-year resident of Havre de Grace. I serve on the Planning Commission and the Ethics Commission in Havre de Grace. So, the Harford County Association of Realtors is a not-for-profit professional trade organization that is the voice of real estate and an advocate for home ownership and property rights in Harford County. We recognize Maryland residents continue to feel the impacts of a decreasing housing supply and an increasing housing cost. To reverse these trends, we believe policymakers must change current regulations that prevent the construction of smaller, more attainable, missing middle types of housing that Maryland and Harford County desperately needs. The Harford County Association of Realtors supports efforts that identify and quantify our critical housing needs and take meaningful steps towards addressing our growing housing shortfalls. This organization has over 1,400 members dedicated to providing the best experience for their clients. And not only are we realtors, but we are also your neighbors. Today we have the privilege of holding this event in the Aberdeen City Council chambers and would like to thank Aberdeen Mayor McGrady with a round of applause for allowing us to utilize this great venue. And speaking of mayors, let's welcome our guest, Aberdeen Mayor Patrick McGrady, Bel Air Mayor Paula Edding, and Havre de Grace Mayor Bill Martin. Each of our guests will be asked several housing-related questions and be given a few minutes to answer those questions. Mayors, if you see the paddle that Jessica is holding over there, it means you should wrap up your answer.
It's a red sign. Does it mean stop or does it mean yellow?
Well, it means, yeah, yellow,
Okay,
I guess.
all right, good. All right.
If it gets too bad, we might have to come up with a stop.
Good.
But I have no fear that this is a wordy group here.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get started. This question is for all of the mayors. How would you rate the quality of life in your municipality? What initiatives are in place to improve that quality of life in your city? Mayor Edding, well, I think we'll start with you.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here. I love real estate. I'm one of those people that's always looking to see what the house down the street went for and, what's on the market in my area. It's a really interesting area to me, and I think just to everybody. I would rate the quality of life in Bel Air, of course, as terrific, not just because I'm mayor, but because I've lived there for over 30 years. The Baltimore Sun had a vote, and Bel Air was voted the best suburb in July of 2024, so we must be doing something right? So my theme for why our town is a terrific place to live is parks, police, public works, and parades. Our parks have been, after this year, we will have renovated every park that we have. We are doing a lot of park improvements, including updating the play equipment, updating the surfaces to make them more accessible for our community members. We've also added items like AEDs. I think at the end of this year, we'll have one in every park. Currently, we have one in the Pocket Park on Office Street, which is another thing. Not all of our parks are the big parks with the swing sets and that sort of thing. We try to tuck in a little pocket park here and there. There's one on Office Street right across from the courthouse. Visit it if you're ever in downtown Bel Air. It's a terrific place. And you'll notice there is an AED unit. You can't just open the box. You have to call 911, which is a great idea, right? Because if you have a problem, you want help to come. But you can call and get the code to open the box, and you can start rendering aid right away, which it's so important. It also will have a Stop the Bleed kit in there, as well as Narcan. So we're trying to address any emergency. We're trying to equip somebody in our populated areas with a way to give help. We also have the music on Main. We have our little free libraries. We have a little free art gallery. We're a state-designated arts and entertainment district, only one of 29 in the state. We have our Bel Air Farmers Market every Saturday morning from 8 until 12, from now until like November, I think. They just celebrated their 50th 50th year, which I think is just a huge, huge accomplishment. We have Winter Wonderland, we had the Town Derby, we have the 4th of July Parade, of course. We have a lot of events that are free. Back to our parks, we have disc golf was added to Rockfield, pickleball's in Homestead, we have the Rockfield Creative Playground, and the Water Century Park. So that's our parks. Our police, safety is so important no matter where you live, right? Everybody wants to live in a safe community. Bel Air is a very, very safe place. My hat is off to our police department for all that they do. I had asked the chief on one occasion, what's our biggest crime problem? And he said retail theft. Well, I'm not glad that we have any kind of a crime problem, but if I have to pick one, retail theft is, not as bad as some of the other things that you could have as a crime problem in your jurisdiction. To fight the retail theft, our police department works closely with a number of the big box stores. In our budget this year, we have funded a new AI computer camera system that we're going to put in certain locations, and we're going to have a police watch unit. So the problem with the retail thefts are getting there fast enough to catch the people that are doing it, right? The other problem with retail thefts is if you get there and they get out of the parking lot and they're speeding down one of our byways, and mom in the minivan with the kids is in the way, that's a tragedy waiting to happen. So they do not do that, but the idea is to solve the crime without giving putting anybody else at risk, whether it's the people that work in the store or anybody else. So this will allow the police department to look for who was it, to look for a car, to look for a tag, and hopefully we want to become the jurisdiction known as the don't go there and commit a crime place, because you will get caught, whether you're caught right away. And we have had some very quick response times because they are aware of the stores that get hit the most, and they will be around. And we had one that was like a 60-second. They never got out of the parking lot, and they caught them. And they're generally people that are the 95 corridor. They travel up and down. We're not the only the jurisdiction that has this kind of problem. Everybody does, but we're going to fight it and fight it hard. Public Works. To live in the town of Bel Air, our Public Works department is terrific. They are besides our police department, our other forward-facing unit that most people get to see. They pick up trash, they pick up recycling. You can put out bulk trash. They come around and they pick up the Christmas trees. You can put out your lawn clippings, and you trimmed all your bushes and all that sort of thing. They are also, of course, very helpful when we have any of our events as far as cleanup. Somebody's got to come, and the Derby. When the last race was done in the Derby, I see the dump truck backing down Main Street, picking up hay bales and signs and all that sort of stuff as they went. And they were done so fast you would have never known that the event had taken place, which is also important because people want to drive down Main Street, right? We're interfering with traffic. And finally, parades. Our Christmas parade has really grown from what used to be kind of a smallish parade to a really big event in town. It is a terrific event. We now have an actual Norway spruce real live tree where the event ends in Shamrock Park, and we have free cookies and hot chocolate, and there's music from the community band. It is a great thing. And of course, next coming up on our schedule is our 4th of July parade, which is our really big parade, and I'll go check to see if today people are already putting out blankets and chairs because they do start early. It is very, very popular. So we're a small town, 10,700 people, but we draw from the county as a whole. So many people come to town for our events, to shop, for governmental things, visit the county office building, go to either of the 2 courthouses. We're on everybody's radar, and we're happy to have everybody come and visit us. And for those of us that are lucky enough to live there, it is a great place to live.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor Martin, would you like to talk about quality of life and habit of grace?
Thank you, Ed. And again, thanks for having me here. I'm not sure how many times I've done this, maybe 5 times or something like that, but it's always been a great time. We've been in a lot of different venues, been to the Star Center, Independent Brewery, and so anyway, it's good to be here in Aberdeen. So thanks for hosting, Mayor McGrady.
Yes,
we appreciate it. So, quality of life is, you ask different people what they think that means, you'll always get different answers. But I feel we start with public safety, because that's the most important thing. Without public safety, there is zero quality of life. I mean, nobody wants their cars vandalized. Nobody wants things stolen from their yard, things like that. So, we feel we do a pretty good job with public safety in the city of Harford Grace. We have a very low crime rate. that doesn't mean, you know, a kid's bicycle doesn't get stolen from time to time, but the police usually pick it up 2 blocks later. But I mean, you know, we're a city, and cities are always going to have issues. But most of my citizens have always told me they never feel uncomfortable walking outside at night in the city of Harford Grace, and that's important. Second thing is, my administration believes that you can really judge the quality of life of a city by asking kids if they like growing up in the city. Like say, hey kid, did you like growing up in Harford Grace? And if they say yes, well then, I think you nailed it. You know, so it's very important that kids can feel like they belong to a lot of organizations. You know, we have the rec committee that covers everything from dancing to soccer to wrestling, just, you know, just all kind of stuff. Basketball. We have Little League. The city has a youth commission that dedicates a lot of events all year around the city for kids to chip in and have some fun and get to meet kids. A lot of sponsors, giveaways, things like that for kids to participate in. A lot of playgrounds and parks throughout the city. You know, again, it goes back to public safety. Parents feel safe if their kids get on their bicycle and then go down to the rural farms, get a Slurpee, or 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee with their friends. I mean, that's kind of the things like, hey, did you enjoy growing up in Harford Grace as a kid? And I think that's a really good marker. If you feel safe for your kids to walk out of the house and go play with their friends, that's quality life. But then you can switch to like, you know, well, what do adults want? You know, the people who are investing in our community, you know, what are they looking for? And sometimes you have to deliver as advertised. We are a city that has an arts and entertainment district. We've had that designation since 2008, but when I became mayor, I got on city council in 2008, and I was on council for 7 years until I ran for mayor in 2015. But when I became mayor in 2015, you know, we had very little art and no entertainment, even though we had that designation for a while. And if you live in that district, then the state gives tax credits and things like that to artists that create crafts and live and work in that district. So we've come a long way in the last 10 years with murals and sculptures and performing arts centers. In 2016, by a referendum approval, the citizens funded a bond to redo the old Opera House / City Hall, and now it's a performing arts center that we simply just call the Opera House, or the Cultural Center at the Opera House. That's a 200-seat venue. And in 2021, when we had a new high school built, it was a split campus high school. They tore down the academic building, made it a big parking lot. But the auditorium gymnasium side, we worked out a deal with the county and Barry Glassman at the time, and the city took ownership of it. And we've now made that a performing arts center as well, close to 740 seats. So we've had a lot of public buy-in for that. The state has helped us out a lot with our local delegation because it needed a new roof, needed some HVAC work, needed new seats, new curtains, needed sound and lighting. So it's been a great partnership with our other levels of government to help us out. But today, you know, Harford County citizens have 2 performing arts centers, you know, and Harford Grace. And we also have the State Theater on St. John Street. That's a privately owned thing. So there's all kind of arts. I mean, wherever you want to see, you know, mud wrestling, and we've had that. I mean, where you want to see, you know, concerts or plays.
Mud wrestling?
Or we've had mud wrestling at the State Theater. It gets pretty popular. But
Did you do that? I know you do hockey. Did you do mud wrestling?
nah, I've never did. That's why I play hockey, because I don't like mud. But so we have to deliver as advertised. You know, we have trolleys that move people, free trolleys that move people throughout our city to get to the parks and to get to the downtown business areas, the restaurants. And that's another thing too, is outdoor recreational opportunities. If you just want to take a nice walk. It's a very walkable city. We have the promenade, we have the Joe K Trail that goes all the way up almost to the quarry. These are all well-maintained walkways. Access to outdoor recreational opportunities to me is very important. And if you know Harford Grace, you know it's pretty much laid out as a grid. And from the 7-Eleven on Union Avenue down to Commerce Street Park is exactly 1 mile. And people love just walking down the grid of Harford Grace and back. It's very flat. We have a lot of 5Ks. So, you know, like I say, quality of life is just one of those things that, you know, you ask different people, you get different answers. But to me, it's do you feel safe in the city? The kids like growing up there. Do we have good schools? And I believe we have really good schools. We have a new high school, middle school. And also, do you feel like the city is always moving forward in a positive direction? And the answer, I feel, is yes. We try very hard to be a 21st century forward-thinking city. In a lot of ways, we do things and execute our policies. Again, when I became mayor in 2015, we had no public water fountains anywhere. We had no recycling bins anywhere publicly. I mean, not that this is rocket science. It's just sometimes you know, and not blaming anybody. I mean, I was on council since 2008. I could have done something about it, but sometimes you get, you know, your mindset gets locked in a direction sometimes you can't see through the forest. And It's like, my God, people say to us, I come here and I'm walking around with a plastic bottle for an hour because as a visitor, I have no place to put it. They don't want to put it into a receptacle. They want to put it into a recycling bin. So these are small things that we work on in Harvard Grace. But I think we're doing good. I think we're doing well. Property values are good, and we'll talk about that later. People are moving into Harvard Grace, and we're keeping the ball moving forward. And I'm sure many people know we got a wonderful downtown restoration project going on in our historic district. So things are heading in a positive direction. So thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you, sir. Mayor McGrady, the floor is yours.
You guys had good answers, so I'm not going to amplify, but I have some questions. In Bel Air, you have retail theft issues. We similarly in Aberdeen have retail theft issues. We have the Aberdeen Home Depot. We have the Walmart, the Target, and these are based on visitors coming here who similarly hop on 95 and off 95. Are your issues in Bel Air related to your big box retail, or are they Main Street?
The big box stores are a large Target.
Yeah.
We have also a Target
Right.
and a Home Depot in town, and they are big Targets. Ulta is a big Target. You can steal a lot of merchandise apparently in a small sort of bag. Target has also been hit as well. Electronics are really popular to be stolen. So we do have that problem, and that is, a real negative. I feel worse for the small businesses on Main Street
We're going to spin it in the other direction.
that also get hit because, for the small business, it's much more out of their pocket than
Yes.
it is for the big boxes who can
Yeah.
stand it better. So we have our small businesses are when they see somebody in their store, they will contact one another. So
And the
it's small
difference
town.
having the local police means that they can be nearby when those things happen, and we each
Correct.
have a Aberdeen, Bel Air, Harvard Grace
Correct.
Police Department, so we're not reliant only on outside agencies that have different priorities than just the square footage area. That's good, yeah.
And besides the fact that we are a smaller footprint.
Yeah.
If you're in the county and you have to, wait for somebody to come, and this is no criticism of the sheriff's office at all, but it's just a matter of geography. We are pretty small, so if we have some officers in town, as we always do, they can be there pretty fast.
Good, thank you. Let's move on. We've been
Okay.
on that topic, and I think
Sure.
we're getting the
No
red
problem.
sign.
No problem. Next question. This question is for Mayor Edding. What are your thoughts on redevelopment in the town of Bel Air, particularly regarding the district court relocation and other changes occurring there?
I'm glad you asked this question because the district court issue is like top of mind right now. I do not understand at all why the state of Maryland is going to take a perfectly good building that was built in about 1982 and just abandon it. I don't understand. I'm not exactly sure what's wrong with the building. I have heard various things. I've heard they're out of space. I've heard there are, mold problems in the building, environmental problems. My house was built in 1986. I am not bulldozing it, even if there's mold in the shower. I have a sub pump in the basement to correct a water problem that I had down there. If you have a building that's otherwise, and I understand it's a steel frame building, so I don't understand why you can't sort of take apart what's not working for you and fix it and put it back together. It is going to be a terrible, terrible thing for the downtown area in Bel Air. We have the circuit court that is right on Main Street, and then the district court, the Mary Ristale building, which also had state offices in it, at 2 South Bond. So if you're an attorney in town, and I am an attorney, and I worked in town for years and years, you can walk back and forth to the courthouse. If you go to the courthouse, there's plenty of places to have lunch. If you have clients coming to meet you at the courthouse, they can have lunch. If there's, a jury going on, the jurors, you order lunch from one of the local businesses and have it brought in, or dinner, depending on what time of day it is. So a whole economy and a whole community has grown up with having these courthouses both in the same geographic area. And it's great for a lot of things that the state of Maryland wants, right? It's very walkable. You can park your car and not have to use it all day if you work in town. It is great for the people of the state's attorney's office and the sheriff's office and the other law enforcement agencies because you can go back and forth between circuit and district court. It's right there. It is really, it doesn't make sense to me what they want to do. So here's my idea, and this is what I'm trying to sell to the state. So anybody that knows anybody, call them, let them know. I think that they should do something completely different. I think they should maintain the district court right here where it has always been and with the other office space that they have in there. I would like to see the comptroller's office. There used to be a state comptroller's office in that building, so if you had some kind of a tax problem, you could make an appointment and go over there and sit and talk to them. Unless they've changed it in the last year or so, you have to go to Elkton, which is a pretty long haul. And I don't think you can pick where you can go. Like, our designated place to go if you have a problem with comptroller's office is their office in Elkton. Like, I don't think you can pick if you work in Baltimore County to go to the Baltimore County one. And I know all these details because I had a little problem with taxes and I was trying to straighten it out, and it was very difficult to find an office that, was convenient. And it got straightened out, via faxing and emailing, that kind of thing, the usual way to do things these days, right? So what could happen to the old district court? It's really speculation. One thing they could do is to surplus it to the county. And one thing that would maybe work if the county decided to is they have, I don't know about the county executive currently, but for years, for probably 30, 40 years, they've talked about bringing all the county offices under one roof. And they could maybe use that building to do that. But I think the district court should stay right where it is so that it's convenient for everyone, for the state's attorney's office, for the law enforcement, for all the folks that live here. And I think they should build a second satellite one in the Route 40 corridor. I think it would be a win-win. You'd serve all the communities on the Route 40 corridor side of the county. Folks that live over there don't have to drive all the way over here to Bel Air. A lot of people have some transportation challenges. It would fix a lot of things. Baltimore County has district courts in Catonsville, Dundalk, Essex, Towson, and I'm sure I'm missing one. But they have district courts, surrounding in the county. I think that would be a terrific idea. It would be great for the economy in the Route 40 corridor, and it would leave our economy alone, which is, already here, set up, working, and it's very convenient for everybody. So that is my idea. They have a lot of parking lot there. Some of it is owned by the county. They could, like they did with Homestead Wakefield, they have the old school, they build a new school, they take the old school down, if that's what you really want to do, if you need a new building. But putting it out where Target is, where the Walgreens is, and the diner is in the middle of nowhere. Everybody's going to have to get in a car and drive somewhere to go to the other courthouse, to go to their office, to go to their business, to go have lunch, to meet clients. It just doesn't really seem to me to make sense. The circuit court building, oddly enough, is still there and in use and hasn't been abandoned, and that has been built. The primary structure was built in like 1905. The courthouse probably pre-exists that, but 1905, it's gone through a lot of improvements. They put an addition on, but I think maybe that's how the state of Maryland got itself in trouble with the $8 billion budget swing they've had, is they take a perfectly good building and throw it away and build something new somewhere else. So
They already bought all that other land. Is there any way to change their trajectory at this point?
that is the question. I'm going to try. It's actually going to be on our agenda later this month for the board to discuss writing a letter to the state and contacting our elected representatives. I'm only one of five,
Sure.
so, I can certainly, do it on my own, but I do want to discuss it with the board. We've had these, impromptu conversations amongst us. Nobody thinks this is good for the town, and I haven't met anybody that thought it made a lot of sense. They have purchased the diner. They haven't closed on the old Walgreens, and they bought the old Lazy Boy place because those places are all boarded up. And of course, what their timeline is for doing this, they have plenty of time to change course because this is not in this budget. And with the current budgetary problems that the state of Maryland is facing, I don't see it happening for a while. So plenty of time to change their mind. My job is I'm going to try to get some people behind this idea. I welcome your participation to both my fellow mayors here. I just don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's good for the town. I think it would be a great thing for the Route 40 corridor, and I think it would be better for all the residents that live here.
Thank you. Mayor Martin, are there any plans for the site where the hospital used to be located? What is being envisioned for those 7 acres?
Sure, yeah, the former Harford Memorial Hospital in downtown Havertide Grace. Question comes up a lot. Nothing's really moved on it since it vacated a couple years ago, but it's zoned by permitted use for a lot of things. The single-family housing, townhomes, a little bit of light retail. It could also be a hospital again. It could be used for senior assisted living or whatever. It could be used, University of Maryland owns it. They could use it for a satellite campus for a nursing school or whatever you want to use it for. It's zoned for a lot of things, but what it's not zoned for is high density apartments. And the last couple serious buyers wanted just that, high density apartments. And the reason really is I don't really know what the asking price is from Upper Chesapeake. They haven't disclosed that to us. But I would imagine whoever buys that property would probably want to take down the building. And when you add the cost of the property and you add the cost of the demolition to the building that's there, the only way you're going to make your money back is if you put high density housing there, which isn't a problem of the cities. I mean, that's the one thing council doesn't have an appetite for that, to change our laws to allow that. I mean, I believe in a free market. I believe in, the need for housing. But if you're familiar with that area of town, could you imagine the intersection of Union and Revolution Street with, 500 people trying to go to work at 7 o'clock? It's not the right fit. There's a lot of things it could be used for. And we're hoping that, I've heard that there's a lot of people throwing pitching some ideas and some bids for, single family homes, like nice homes, maybe a little bit of light retail mixed in there somehow. Again, it's zoned for a lot of things. I don't really like speaking for, property owners. We don't own the property. I mean, I don't know what's going on in the minds of Upper Chesapeake board. I don't know what the asking price is. I don't know if they're lowering it. I don't know if they're working with anybody right now, but I know that they have received recently some bids last time I met with them, and we'll take it from there. So like I said, I don't want to leave everybody with your guess is as good as ours, but there's a lot of things that can be, and there's only a few things that can't be. And right now, the people have wanted what it can't be. And the city's not trying to look like the bad guy here, but we also have to protect the area from irresponsible development. And again, there's a lot of things that can be. That's all I can leave everybody with, and hopefully that it'll work out for everybody, and whatever it is will benefit the property owner and it'll benefit the citizens of Harford.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McGrady, could you update us on the status of the Ripken Stadium, the water distribution system? How's everything coming along there?
Great. So we'll start with the water since following Mayor Martin here, the town of Havre de Grace is in a fortunate situation of being on the Susquehanna River, where the Susquehanna River meets the Chesapeake Bay. Consequence of same, they have tell me if I get anything wrong about this, Mayor, the authority under a permit with the Maryland Department of the Environment to withdraw water from the river, not the bay. Mm-hmm. And they have the ability with their water treatment facility to treat the river water for drinking water. That's how they get their primary source of water from that. And then between 2020 and today, the city of Aberdeen and the town of Havre de Grace arranged for a water purchase agreement where Aberdeen buys upwards of 900,000 gallons a day of water from the town of Havre de Grace through a 14-inch outside diameter HDPE pipe that's alongside Route 40 from Havre de Grace to Bel Air. And so we're taking something like 700,000 gallons a day of water now. And so the last time we talked, I think that was just starting to ramp up. That's in full operation. We spent a bunch of money. They spent a bunch of money on the underground infrastructure required to do that, including extending the water line to their property line. And we helped on our side and built a water booster pump at what's called Raybird Alley off of Beards Hill Road, extended at Route 40, and you can see that if you go there. And so it's a great partnership between Havre de Grace and Aberdeen in that. You want to amplify that before I come back to the baseball stadium?
No, you're good.
All right. So positive development there and success, partnership, great. The first question you asked, Mr. Grono, was relating to the Ripken Stadium. People may be familiar with where the Aberdeen Ironbirds major league affiliated minor league baseball team plays. Got my hat here too. Got my nice hat. The Aberdeen Ironbirds are a Orioles affiliated baseball team that play in Aberdeen's stadium going back to 2001. After an agreement was struck between then the entity called Tufton Professional Baseball, the owner of the Ironbirds, and the city of Aberdeen, with a partnership between the state of Maryland and the county and the city and Tufton Professional Baseball, wholly owned by Cal and Bill Ripken at the time, to build the stadium and operate the stadium for a period of 20 years with a 20-year option in the second 20 years. The 20-year renewal period came up in October of 2022, and there was some disagreement about what the renewal period looks like. There is a clause in the agreement that says that in the second 20 years, so it's a 20-year deal, second 20-year option. In the second 20 years, there's a fee to be paid to the city of Aberdeen that's based on this formula, section 3.02 of the concession agreement, if you have to be down in the weeds like I am. The way the agreement's structured is there's a fee to be paid to the city for the second 20 years. And there was a disagreement on what that fee was. By our calculation, back of the envelope math, it looks like $2 million a year. By their calculation, it looks like $100,000 a year, and we were a little far apart. And so in June of last year, 2024, the city of Aberdeen and Tufton Professional Baseball, again, the wholly owned enterprise of Cal and Bill Ripken, entered into an arbitration. We went to a 2-week arbitration that concluded in person around the first week of July 2024. And then we sat around waiting for the judge in the matter to rule on the concession agreement interpretation. It comes down to a clause. The clause shall have been deemed necessary during the initial term. Now, I have one lawyer sitting up here, and if you could tell me what shall have been deemed necessary during the initial term means, whether it's retrospective or prospective, then we would have not had to spend $400,000 on the lawyers.
That's the language that I refer to as the Full Employment Act for attorneys' language.
Yes, my friend, an attorney, says that's the stuff that lawsuits are made of. And so we concluded the arbitration. We were sitting around waiting for the ruling on the arbitration. The arbitration ruling has been received. I don't think it can be made public at this moment in time, but all of this stems from a change that pre-exists this arbitration. This is the core of the question, what's happening at the baseball stadium. So the baseball stadium exists, again, before 2021. Major League Baseball, the entity organized as Major League Baseball, controls the professional baseball operations. You would know the Philadelphia Phillies, the New York Yankees, the Orioles in Maryland. But they have a hands-off approach to minor league baseball. All the minor league teams are owned by their owners. There's not really a lot of connection between the team that owns the affiliated team. In this case, the Ironbirds are an affiliate of the Orioles. And it's kind of a hands-off operation. The stadiums that the minor league teams play in until 2021 are allowed to, it's the Wild West. They can have bleachers the way they want them. They can have dugouts the way they want them. They can have decorations the way they want them. 2021 comes, Major League Baseball says, we're not going to give you our players, that the contract exists with professional baseball, Major League Baseball, and let them play in these minor league baseball stadiums owned by these podunk towns like Aberdeen or Savannah, Georgia, or whatever jurisdiction owns the Bowie Bay Sox. Yeah, Frederick. We're not going to let you let our players that we have a contract that we want to be on the Orioles one day play in your substandard stadiums. So they created standards that are called the Player Development League Standards of Major League Baseball. We say PDL standards of Major League Baseball. It establishes rules for what the facilities have to look like in order for a Major League affiliated minor league baseball team to participate in baseball in the facility. Okay, so that sounds reasonable. Some standards, sure. Well, amongst the standards are such things as one must provide in their Major League affiliated minor league baseball stadium restrooms for the female umpires in the Major League affiliated minor league baseball situation. To which I said, are there female umpires? Oh, no, but there might be. Okay. You have to provide locker rooms for the female players in Major League Baseball. And I said, do those exist? Oh, no, but there might be. So you have to provide the locker rooms for the female players that might play professional baseball at your stadium at some point in the future. And so there's a scoring system by which all this stuff is calculated. Very smart people, very engineerdy people make the checklist of all the things that are required. The square footage of the ticket counter has to be 36 square feet or greater in order to be able to sell the requisite number of tickets in the relevant amount of time. The batting area has to be this big. The food area for people, the players to get served, refrigerators and showers and carpets and the field, all the stuff that makes sense, like the size of the field, the brightness of the field are regulations, but then everything else. So all of this is to say, 2021, Major League Baseball says, you got 3 years to be in total compliance with this. If you have more than 9 points, on the 118-point scale, then your facility is not eligible for professional baseball to happen in your facility. And I said, all right, which ones are the important ones? And they said, well, the women's locker rooms for the umpires and the women's locker rooms for the players. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a challenge. So the city of Aberdeen entered into a contract with one of these engineered firms that does this, and he evaluates our stadium for $350,000 and determines that in order to do this, we need $9 million to be spent on our stadium in short order in order for this to happen. So this is all background. What's going to happen next year? The Maryland Stadium Authority, okay, speaking a lot of jargon, is an entity controlled by the state legislature, created by the state legislature under the authority of the governor, deals with a lot of baseball, football stuff. They control the Raven Stadium in Baltimore and the Camden Yards facility for the Orioles, and they have been tasked, they've been given a pot of $200 million to spend on major league affiliated minor league baseball stadiums in the state of Maryland. So they spent $50 million in Frederick. They spent somehow $80 million on the Bowie Stadium that has been rebranded the Chesapeake Bay Stadium, and there's a bunch of money remaining in this pot of money they have that wants to be spent at Aberdeen. Well, these kinds of projects take a lot of time, so it's likely what we're hearing from the background again. In October of 2024, Cal and Bill Ripken sold their interests in the Ironbirds baseball team. Okay, they sold their interest in the Ironbirds baseball team to a private equity group that's called Attain Sports. Okay, so we're not dealing with the same owners of Tufton Professional Baseball. The new owners say, we want to do this. They also own the team that plays at the Frederick Stadium, the team that plays at the Bowie Bay Sox Stadium in Prince George's County. They also own a minor league affiliated with Major League Soccer in Virginia. And so the play they're executing here is to get all this money from the state of Maryland, improve these stadiums, and then sell the whole pool of major league sports assets as a way to return this. So it's not in opposition to what they're doing, but that's what they're doing. All said, they're going to move the major league affiliated baseball from Aberdeen probably next year to Frederick for next season. And they'll probably try to move to Aberdeen what's called a college draft league from Frederick to Aberdeen. It doesn't have to meet all the PDL requirements. Meanwhile, the city of Aberdeen is working to get this pot of money from the Maryland Stadium Authority to make improvements to our facility. It's complicated. And so people ask me, what's going on with the baseball stadium? And I say, how much time you got? You know, because I wish I could say this is where we're at, but there's a lot of moving parts. We're also working. Say again.
Your time might be up.
Yes. No. We're also working with the youth sports stuff. So it used to be called the Ripken Experience. If you go down what's called Long Drive, on the right side is the city of Aberdeen's property where our baseball stadium is, where our 19-acre parking lot is, where the Maryland Italian Festival is going to be this year. And on the left side of Long Drive is what used to be called the Ripken Experience. This is where you see all these rich kids from all over the region coming to Harford County, in their Escalades and their full-size Suburbans, parking with the New Jersey and the Pennsylvania and the Washington, D.C. plates all over our region, spending money in our restaurants and stuff. We're working with them to expand their operation too, and so this is not final and fixed. There's more to follow, and we're on top of it as an issue, but thank you for the question.
Okay. Thank you for the answer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Back to real estate. As you know, infill development is a strategy that focuses on building or redeveloping underutilized or vacant land in existing areas. What plans, if any, do you have for infill development? Mayor Edding, what are your thoughts on this infill?
Well, the question sort of is, what plans do other people have for infill development? Because we sit there and wait for somebody to come in and say, hey, this is what I like to do. Well, we don't really sit there and wait. We have economic development who's going out and is trying to fill our empty storefronts. Some of our empty storefronts, the business owners are not particularly interested in having filled, which is one problem that we haven't really found a good solution to, but if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear them. I think one of those is going to resolve itself, the old Boyd and Fulford, that is just a beautiful building right on Main Street. Sadly, very sadly, Dr. Street recently passed. He was like an icon, nicest man on the face of the earth. When I was knocking on doors running for election in 2021, I knocked on his and told him how much I admired his home. I drive past it all the time. He invited me in for a tour. Where else does that happen but like small town America? And I enjoyed the tour where he showed me some of the ice cream shop table and chairs that he said were from the Boyd and Fulford. And he said that they were comfortable, but not too comfortable because they didn't want you to stay too long. So it was a great day. We are basically just infill development. We don't have any more large swaths of land that can sprout houses tomorrow. We are largely landlocked. There's not many ways we could do any annexations. It would only be if there was a large swath close to us that wanted to be annexed in to get some benefits, from being in town, and they don't really exist anymore. The standard on bond is one of the projects that is going to be a big boost for the Bond Street corridor, which has been sort of the ugly stepchild for years. It's the back of Main Street. All the Main Street businesses have the back of their buildings face on that. So it needs a little love. I think the standard on bond is going to certainly, be an invigoration for that road. They also have a little pocket park that went with the standard on bond, which is just beautiful. And I see people there eating. You can go to Newberry Bakery and then, have your coffee and donut and be outside, not today, but, on one of the days where it's not 1,000 degrees and 1,000% humidity. Some of the other things, there were several buildings on Office Street which were vacant for many years. I think people were using them for storage because I could see stuff, like furniture in there. Those have been rehabilitated through a Project Restore grant, so thank you to the state of Maryland for that. Standard on Bond is a mixed-use project on Bond Street, and Raising Cane's on Baltimore Pike, which is the old Pete cycle that closed in 2019, is up out of the ground and looking like it's, going gangbusters to get finished. So infill is definitely something that, we're interested in filling every place on Main Street that we can to have all of those businesses occupied. A lot of people want to come to town and be on Main Street. Some of our problems are they don't have the right space, or the people that own the space are not interested in renting it. They're using it themselves for not like its highest and best use, but for storage or something like that. I'm not sure what we can do with that, but we're working on it. There are 2 properties out near IBC that are going to probably be demolished. There was a state grant for those, and then we'll see, what happens there. I think they're going to possibly be parking for IBC, which has been successful beyond, I think, their wildest dreams. They hit on the perfect thing during COVID. You could be outside, you could have a beer, the food trucks could come, on a tiny postage stamp. They made like a huge business. It's a great thing to see that they're doing so well, and I would have never had that idea myself. So that's why I say I'm not seeking infill. They have ideas out there, and we are thrilled to help you find a space in town and help you figure it out. So
Thank you.
that's it.
Mayor Martin, we'll go to you on infill development.
So, thank you. So the city of Havre de Grace, back in 2009, took on a massive debt for a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. And this wastewater treatment plant was needed to accommodate the full development of the Bully Rock community, Greenway Farms, and any other community that would come online. It's about a $48 million plant. When I say state-of-the-art, I mean, you could, not that I've done this, but you could literally drink the water being discharged back into the bay. It takes the effluent and removes it all, treats it, just boom, it's good. And that's what we had to do. So the state forgave about $20 million of it, but we're on the hook for about $28 million, and we have about a $2.2 million. I like to use the word mortgage payment. I mean, in the government, you use the word debt service. I mean, you ever go home and say, I'm going to write my debt service check to it? Anyway, but it's basically a mortgage payment for the plant. And how do we pay that in our water sewer fund? Capital cost recovery fees. So when you come in the city of Havre de Grace and you build a new home, it's fluctuated. Right now, it's a $25,000 hookup fee. I have no doubt it's probably most expensive in the county, but it's the only way. Like we say, how much do we owe on the plant, and then how many homes can we have built, and it's just a matter of math to be able to pay that debt service. With that said, that's going to expire in about 2 years. We'll have it paid down. But the reason I bring that up is, when we look at, the total amount of homes being on the, built out in Bully Rock and the total amount of homes that's going to be built on Greenway Farms. And you have the Legacies project, which is going to be up towards the interchange. And all these homes are like on the map. We haven't realized the money yet for these hookups, but they're on the map, so it's important. But whenever you get an infill project, that's a capital cost recovery you weren't planning on, which is really good for the city's water and sewer infrastructure. So it's important. I mean, it's good. I mean, if you drive around Harford Grace, if you lived in Harford County a long time and you drive around Harford Grace, I'm sure you've seen little vacant lots on Market Street or St. John's or Union Avenue. And a lot of those are being filled in now. They're either being subdivided by the owner or just some people I think it's time to sell. But there's other ways you can gauge the progress. It used to be, well, how many capital cost recovery fees do we have this year? And he said, oh, people are moving to Harford Grace. We really need to get like 100 to 130 a year to keep making that debt service. That's a lot of homes being built. I'm talking new homes. But you can also look at permits when people come in and say, hey, I want to renovate my house, or I want to put an ADU in my backyard, or do something like put a deck, because that's amazing. I mean, if you start looking at that, I mean, people are really dumping some money in their homes in the city of Harford Grace. I mean, go to some Rust Belt town in Pennsylvania and tell me how many people are putting millions of dollars into their permits for their houses and their dorms and their renovations. I mean, it's a good sign of the economy. And I'm going to mention this later as another question, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit. Cities, by their own design, are supposed to keep developing. They have to. That's why we call them cities. We're not a farm. We're not a wildlife preserve. We're not a state park or state forest. We are a city. And there will come a day where there's no more place to build in the city of Harford Grace. We're a small city geographically. We're bordered by I-95, Susquehanna River, Chesapeake Bay, and the wonderful city of Aberdeen. And we just can't really get any bigger. I mean, sure, we could jump over 95, and maybe future mayors and councils will do that. I'm inclined not to. So we only have X amount of land to develop. Now, we have been enjoying, I say the word enjoying, I mean, I have not had to raise the tax rate in 10 years. All of the things we're doing in our city, we're able to do with the increased value of the tax rate, 56.5 cents. We have not had to touch it because we've been enjoying people coming into the city with the infill, with the planned communities in Bully Rock, Greenway Farms. And so, but that day will come to an end one day, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 50 years from now. And when that happens, it'll be the people who are in that city that will have to bear through their taxes the cost of whatever the police cost at that time, whatever it costs to operate, Parks and Harbor, whatever it costs to operate, getting the streets paved and the sidewalks done and the water and sewer plant maintained. So I believe in development only because that's how cities survive. And so right now we're doing really well. We have an industrial park in Harford Grace off of Old Bay Lane behind Stansel Field, and there's a lot of buildings, people building. They're expanding their businesses and adding on to it. So that's the lifeblood of our city. I don't want to sound like the Lorax from Dr. Seuss or anything like that, but the reality is, I mean, you just drive 2 miles in one direction and you're out in Harford County. But in the city of Harford Grace, we have to develop to survive, but develop extremely smartly. And in decades past, we're constantly haunted at City Hall from the ghost of development past, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. We haven't always developed very smartly in the city of Harford Grace. With road widths, with connectivity of our, easements, so again, I'm pro-development only because I want my city to be able to survive and the future taxpayers to be able to have more payers into the system so the tax burden is spread out. But the most important thing is that we do it smartly and without doing it where future generations are going to look back and think, what were they thinking in 2025 when they did this? So again, I know there's another question. I mean, in fact, actually it's the next question. It talks about, how we're perceived by developers. And I'll stop here, but I'll get onto that in a little bit. But pro-smart development, we love infill. It's like the gift of development. It's important. And the more people that come and pay, come in the city, live in the city, pay into the city's stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Mr. McGrady, what can you tell us about infill development?
So Aberdeen and Harford Grace have the benefit of being formerly very prosperous towns 100 years ago. And we have a lot of buildings that are old, and Bel Air too. We have a lot of buildings that are old that have, some of them, reached the end of their useful life, have been demolished, which is what causes often the vacant lot. It's not that nobody ever did anything there. It's that that's a lot that used to have a house that burned down in 1974. It got cleared and now it's grass. Or that was the site of the boarding house next to Grace Methodist Church on West Bel Air Avenue that turned into a place of ill repute, let's say. And then Grace Methodist Church bought it and then burned it down because it was a problem in 1997 or something like that. Now it's a municipal parking lot. And so I think that I think the direction that Mayor Martin's going, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mayor Martin, is that the life of a city is evolving, is that what we're trying to do is always trying to get to the next increment of loveliness for the communities that we represent. And so what that means is that the people who are in positions of authority need to look for the things that are the most lovely and incrementally make those changes. Things like adding the recycling bins Mayor Martin was talking about, things like improving the sidewalk connectivity where you see the pain point. Nobody complains about it because that's just the way it is. A lot of people have a hard time with vision. They have a hard time seeing how this could be different. But they know it's a headache when they have to step up that 11-inch curb that happens to be where the asphalt has shrunk down, but they just deal with it. And then one day, somebody who has the ability to make decisions sees the stroller trying to be dragged up the 11-inch curb and says, we're going to fix that. And then we make the improvement, and then it's much better because now it's got an ADA accessible ramp where the person can easily access that. And what's incumbent upon thinking about cities as they age, as the built environment changes, as the people who live in the built environment change in their character, whether they are walkers more or they're walkers less, or they are reliant upon their vehicles to get them to the faraway place where they work and then return them home. We have to think about how we can make the built environment serve the people who live in our communities. It's not an ego project. It can't be what we think was good. It's got to be what serves our people best. And it's a push and a pull because the people who get elected have different ideas sometimes than the people who want to do different things in their community. But regarding infill, we have a lot of great opportunities in Aberdeen, and we are on the precipice of a $50 million investment from Amtrak in rebuilding their train station. So right now we're in Aberdeen City Hall at 60 North Park Street. 1 block away is Route 40. Another block up towards Baltimore is West Bel Air Avenue at Route 40, where Amtrak has a train platform that's 2 cars long. So 2 weeks ago when me and my family went to Philadelphia to watch Manchester City play against Wydad in Philadelphia, we took the Amtrak. You have to, when you're coming back, you have to go to the dining car to get off because the train car is like 15 cars long, but they say, getting off at Aberdeen, please go to the dining car because there's only 2 stops. Amtrak is extending the length of the rail platform 1,100 feet, 1,100 feet to Baltimore. Right? They're extending the rail platform. They're building a 3-story elevator overpass. This is happening, tied into the improvements. I hope Mayor Martin's going to talk about associated with the Amtrak rail bridge improvements. When we were coming back from Philadelphia, we had to stop. We had to go down to like 5 miles an hour for like 15 minutes waiting to cross the bridge between Cecil County and Harford County because of the age of it. There's not enough lanes on there for trains to go both directions. So Amtrak's doing that. So relating to infill, what we're talking about relating to our what we call transit-oriented development area, had a really interesting a meeting with the Army Research Lab director on APG, the military base that's a mile that direction, that they have a challenge recruiting the young people who get their PhD to work at the Army Research Lab Research Division. They show up here and then they get all their certifications and then they decide to move to Baltimore. They decide to move to other places in the world. And what she expressed, and this is good that we're having this dialogue, is that there's no easy way to tell the good stuff that's happening in Harford County that they can sit and check down the box, this is why you should live here. And I had this grand vision of a website where it's not, we don't want you to be a tourist here. We want you to be a part of our community because we're great, we love it here, and we want you to be a part of our community. And so, not Bel Air or Aberdeen or Havre de Grace, but our community of awesome stuff, you know. And we've got, and what I envisioned was, here's all the great church congregations in the Christian faith, and here's the Jewish community, and here's the Muslim community, and the different religious congregations that you can plug into moving to our community. Here's the places where you can get the best food to eat. Here's the places where you can see the best sights. I think that if we have that, we can pitch that to these new people, because we want these brilliant PhDs and all these people that work here rather than commuting. It came up in the context of the Amtrak station. They're going to do this $50 million project to do this. It's going to be super easy to get from D.C. to Aberdeen, Philly to Aberdeen, and then onto the installation through the middle gate. But if we can keep these people here, they're the ones that are going to help us pay for the cost of all this stuff that we need in the future. And so this was just yesterday, but we should put our heads together on how that website's going to work. I called my contact at Harford County. I think it's their job, but if that doesn't happen, then we got to do it, infill. So we're working on infill of a bunch of vacant spaces we've got on West Bel Air Avenue, but also stuff surrounding the train station in what we call the TOD area, where we're permitting up to 6 stories of development to be like a real city. And so people should slow down. I went with my family one day. It was balls hot on Saturday, I guess. We went over to Port Deposit because the Susquehanna rail trail from Havre de Grace up to the Conowingo Dam was closed. There's a big sign that says, you're not allowed to ride your bike on the trail, okay? I loaded up 5 bikes, put them on the back of the van. We drove up there. We were ready to bike in the shade. And we got there, it says, there's bird flu, you can't go on the rail trail. I'm like, what? So we went to Port Deposit, we walked around Port Deposit. Everything looks different at people speed. Everything looks different at the speed of foot instead of at car. So if you go into Havre de Grace and you slow down and you look at the buildings, you look at the second floor and you look at the ground floor. If you look at in Bel Air, if you look at the ground floor, you look at the second floor, look at the roof. These buildings that exist in Port Deposit and in Aberdeen and Bel Air and Havre de Grace have a story that reaches beyond the current owner, that reaches beyond the current occupant of the building, that we can embrace and we can share with new people who want to live in our community too. And this is incumbent on all of us who want Harford County to be more lovely to tell those stories. Like this building in 1964 was a shoe store. Next door was the bakery. Those guys, that guy married that gal, and that's the mayor from 2000 to 2014 or whatever. Those kinds of stories exist that touch people's hearts, and that's how we get people bought into the future to infill all of our spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. All right, we'll move on. Do you believe there is a hesitation among developers to work with municipalities due to potential zoning changes being made after a project is begun, or because of the slow permitting process? Mayor Edding, we'll start with you.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say yes. I think there is, not so much because of the slow permitting process. I don't think the permitting process is really all that slow. In town, I can tell you that there's one project that came in on a Friday to pay all their fees and finish their permit application, and their permit was issued on Monday. So as far as getting the actual permit, it's pretty darn quick. The problem is, of course, all the things you have to do to get to applying for your permit. And that, it just takes a while. If it's not something complicated, if I want to put a deck on my house, I can probably go in on Friday and get my permit on Monday. If you're going to do something like the mall or the Standard on Bond or Hickory Flats, you are going to be in a process. Your first step is to come in and talk to the town planning department and tell them what you think you'd like to do, and they can give you some direction, maybe help you not head in a direction that's not going to ultimately work out due to the town zoning regulations, stormwater management requirements. There's like a lot of moving parts to putting up something big. If you're coming in for one house, I don't think it could take very long. But all these other projects, it's really a process. You have to sit down with your idea with the planning department. You have to go to your architects and your engineers and you get your plans. And it still probably wouldn't take that long if you weren't asking for something. You'd all have to go to the planning commission to say, here's my project, and I'm going to put this up. We have one small business that is a restaurant nail salon, and they came in, and there should be relatively uncomplicated, but they're not saying, I want to meet my parking requirement by doing this, or I want to meet my green space requirement by, doing that, or, I want a variance because I want to be another 2 feet taller. All of that plays into how long it's going to take a project to get through the process. And then it depends on the entity itself. We have had entities that have come in, have all their ducks in a row, have people that are experienced in the area, and they go through. It does take a while, but they go through relatively uncomplicated, get their approvals, and move on. Then we have some folks that they run it. I suspect they have problems of their own, funding problems. So, they need to make changes to their architectural renderings, and, it takes a while. They don't maybe have all the money they need to pay for all the fees. It's very expensive to hook into the counties, to Maryland Americans Water, to the sewer system. It's not just pay like a fee for somebody to look at your papers. There's a lot of money involved in a large project. I don't think that anybody needs to be concerned about coming to town of Bel Air anyway, if they're well prepared and have a thorough consult with the planning department and have people that are experienced in the area. If you're trying to go it alone without an attorney and without engineers that know what they're doing, it's just going to take you longer. You'll get there, but you're not going to know all the pitfalls that somebody who's got experience already knows. It may be the elephant in the room, but Hickory Flats is really the project that probably comes to mind most for this particular issue. Hickory Flats came to the Board of Appeals in April of 2022, and they got approved for a 1.5-foot variance, and then they got Planning Commission approval in December of that year. They allowed their variance to lapse, and that was just on them. So they eventually had to come back in, do the whole process again. But when they came, that's the entity that came in on a Friday, paid all their fees that were due, and got their permit on a Monday. Part of that also was the town made a change in their density requirements. Hickory Flats is not my favorite project. I am with Mayor Martin that we need to do responsible development. Hickory Flats is 87 apartments on a small couple of lots that they've purchased the houses, took down the old houses. It's an infill thing. I think it would have been great for townhouses. I like home ownership. The town is about 60-40 homeowner versus rental. I think the county at large or the state is 80-20, something like that. You become something different if you are an all rental transient kind of an area. So, to retain our small town, family friendly, kind of stable neighborhood, we don't want to go too far in that direction. It's not that anybody doesn't like apartments really, but everybody's lived in apartments. My kids lived in apartments. My husband lived in an apartment. It's different things are right at different stages of your life, right? But it is a 57 dwelling unit per acre density, that project, because that zoning designation did not have a density requirement with it. It was thought in years gone past that the parking requirement would be a natural break on how many units you could squash in. This development took advantage of something that is in the code, that you can use the parking garage that's right next door to satisfy your parking requirement. I don't know how many people are going to want to live in an apartment and use the parking garage next door for parking, but that is a market issue that somebody thinks it's going to work, so, good for them. So in that case, when we found this out, most of the town is 20 dwelling units per acre. So 57 dwelling units per acre on a 2-lane street, 1 lane in each direction, with the firehouse and then the library and town hall and St. Margaret's School is kind of a lot of traffic to dump into that tiny area. So we passed a piece of legislation. It was introduced on February 3rd. On February the 7th, Hickory Flats came in and applied for their building permit, and they got it on Monday, February 10th. The law took effect on March the 24th. So they are, I hope, the last project that will be so dense and so out of character with the town, but that, I think, is the source maybe of this question, and I know it has worried developers because one of them told me so. So, there have been some changes with the new board. One is this density issue, which really had to be corrected. We cannot have something like that again. One was our green space our fee in lieu of for green space, we made changes to that too, because what we found was a project was coming in and going green space, write the check, okay, and now I have all that space to, do my project. The money that we were charging for it did not reflect the real value or cost. So we have made some changes in that. So I understand that seeing changes when you're a builder or developer and you have like a plan and we're changing the rules, I get that that is, scary. But we are all for responsible development. The density change actually, while it would have affected Hickory Flats if they didn't get a permit and substantial construction by the time the law took effect, it would not have affected Standard on Bond or the mall project, even if it had been applicable to them, which it is not. But it would not have affected them. It was Hickory Flats is just so far out of what density is appropriate for the town of Bel Air that we had to change it. And it is, they are up and building now as we speak, but we hope to not have any more of those. So we're good for responsible development, but it has to be something that's in character with the town.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Martin, any thoughts on that subject?
So, the first thing I tell every brand-new council member, privately, one-on-one, I'll tell them, regardless of what you think your job is here, your real job at the end of the day is to protect the city from those who would take advantage of it. And I say, you'll know what I mean pretty soon. The first thing I tell my staff, my directors, is the law is black and white, sometimes. There's a lot of gray area in laws, and sometimes that gray area in laws is done by design. And all my staff members know, when given two options, we always take the path of least resistance for the citizen. Okay, we don't make it harder for them. We try to find the easiest route. Sometimes there's no wiggle room. Sometimes it's like, well, that's not very clear in the charter or the code book. You can do this or this. And so I say, always come down on the side of the citizen. We work for them. So there's that fine line between protecting the city from those who would take advantage of it, and there's also that line we have to walk where we serve the citizens. This question, this whole topic is like my biggest Achilles heel. That's something that even in 10 years I haven't been able to get my hands around to perfection. Because, it's like, it was kind of like, they say, when a soldier gets captured as a prisoner of war, their job is always try to escape. Well, it's like a developer's always going to try to save money, and sometimes it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't ever get personally upset at a developer. I mean, it's like, as long as you're not lying to me, I mean, I get it. It's always that, Tom and Jerry relationship, Coyote and Roadrunner. And
Which one's Tom and which one's Jerry?
I don't haven't figured that one out yet. It depends on the day, but sometimes you'll get people complain that the city's coming down heavy-handed, and you'll realize, well, they're just not checking the boxes off that we gave them. I mean, if you sit down and you do this, everything that's laid out in front of you, I mean, everything's going to be good. I've had people say, oh, the city of Harvard Grace is a pleasure to work with. They laid everything out for us. We did this, this, and this, and everything went smooth. And then you get people that, instead of telling us what's wrong, they'll go to social media and say, the city did not run power lines for us. I'm like, okay, well, we don't even do that. I mean, it's one of those things. However, you cannot take a position that every developer is crazy because, there was an instance where, last year, a lot of developers came to me and citizens who were building, and they had a complaint, and I listened. And their complaints, and I slowly started investigating. And we did have some issues in my planning department where a lot of the things weren't going as, they should have been going. A lot of steps weren't being followed correctly, and procedures weren't being followed correctly. And my edict of coming down on the side of the citizen in gray areas weren't being followed. And I don't know if you guys read the newspaper. I was brought up on harassment and ethics charges back in December because I came down on my planning director, and to save his job, he slapped me with ethics charges so I couldn't fire him. That's okay. Eventually, the city council fired him. But I mean, the charges were dismissed, but there's an instance where I actually believed the developers and the citizens, and they were right. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, you can't always say, oh, no, you're all wrong. So you have to listen, and basically maybe we should end this by saying each case is different. You know what I mean? And I don't think the next mayor, he or she, is going to solve it any more than I could. All I can do is just try to get the best people I can get and look at each case individually. And I just tell everybody that comes to me, because a lot of times when people want to come to Howard Grace and start a project, whether it's one home or whether it's, 100 homes, I say, let's all just sit in a room together and to the best of our ability with your engineers and, my planning department, just try to figure out the pitfalls. You know what I mean? And usually that's just the best way of going about it. Maryland in general, and then Harford County, and then Howard Grace, I mean, it's this ain't West Texas. You know what I mean? It's like, just can't just put a shovel in the ground and build. It'd be nice if you could, but, zoning laws are there for a reason to make sure that the people on both sides of you, aren't going to live next to a person raising pigs. And so, we have a reason why we have that. So it's like I say, again, it's Achilles heel that I don't know if I'd ever be able to solve it. I'm just being honest with you. But the best way to do it as a mayor is just take each case one at a time and listen to your planning department, listen to the people, listen to the developers. They're not crazy either. They do this for a living. You know what I mean? So, but like I said, it's something we wrestle with. But I'll tell you what, I get a lot of people come in my office all the time. They're like, Mayor, City of Howard Grace has a reputation that you're hard to do business with. And I'm like, what are you telling me that for? Am I supposed to lose sleep over that? That's, I don't know. I get that a lot. You know what I mean? I don't really know how to respond to that. I mean, we have laws that were passed by council. I don't write these laws. I enforce them. But it's, at the end of the day, I really think if you want to be in Howard Grace and you want to develop, I think we have a pretty good set list of rules. And if the goalposts are being moved on people, let me know and we'll look into it. You know what I mean? So, but as I said earlier, cities must develop or keep reestablishing itself if they want to survive.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McGrady, would you like to comment on that?
Very quickly, yes. Good feedback, thank you. Looking at the question of, so I'm taking the question, I'm going to squeeze the question a little bit, massage the question. The question is now going to be, how do you look at the feasibility of projects in relation to what the law establishes? So people who might not build things in the world might not understand how this whole process works. There is a development code, which is what we call the rules and regulations that are passed by the legislative body that say, this is what you're allowed to build. The side yard setback has to be like this. The front yard setback is allowed to be this tall. It can be this deep. The outside of the building has to look like this, right? These are the kinds of rules and regulations that municipalities adopt. Where it becomes a challenge is if the legislation says you can do X or Y or Z, and then that creates a problem in a loophole. It creates a problem where the developer is taking advantage of a situation. The cat and mouse game, one example of the cat and mouse game. So developers often, when coming to small towns like Aberdeen or Bel Air or Havre de Grace, they think that they're hot potatoes. They think they come in and you really want them bad. You really want this project, don't you? And somebody like me says, what are we talking about? And they're like, oh, if your fees are too much money, your water connection charge is $17,500. My project doesn't support this. I'm not going to name individuals. My 533 unit apartment project that was recently constructed in Aberdeen doesn't support paying for the water sewer connection charges of $17,500 a door. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of money. That's like $14.5 million. And I said, I don't care. And he says, don't you want my project to hear? And I said, if you don't build it, somebody else will build it. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And he said, my project doesn't support this fee. It's just not going to work. And I said, okay. What else? We need to be level-headed in conversations like this, because otherwise we start throwing if we're not looking out for the best interests of the long term of our communities, we end up jumping on those landmines of accepting less. What the guy was looking for was to reduce the cost of the water sewer connection charge. If we know what the cost of the service is, we can't reduce the cost to the developer, or else it loses money for the rest of the people. Anyway, a couple weeks later, I got a check for $14.5 million, right? So a lot of it is bluster. A lot of the fussing and whining, like Mayor Martin was referencing, is we have costs that are reasonable costs that must be paid in order to accomplish things in our municipalities. I don't mean the water charge and the sewer charge. Those are fixed. Those are tied to a specific thing. I mean, if you're going to build the 87-unit project at Hickory Flats, this sidewalk needs to be widened this entire length in order to get people where they're going here. And that should not be borne by the rest of us who live here already. The developer has to do that, right? So those kinds of things. And one more thing is, Mayor, and when Mayor Martin gets back, I'll reiterate this. I think it's really important for municipal entities to realize you can't outsmart the developers. There's too many of them. They get paid too much money to be really smart and competent. And instead of trying to stop the bad stuff, what we should focus on is figuring out a vision for what it is we want and telling them this is what we're looking for, rather than trying to say at the last minute, this isn't good, this doesn't fit what we wanted. Instead saying this is what we want on the front side, and then let them build that. Because they're smart, and they'll do it. And this is something we've struggled with in Aberdeen. So good, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very, very good. 2 questions left. What would our forum be without a question about accessory dwelling units? The Maryland General Assembly passed House Bill 1466 and Senate Bill 891 this year to establish the promotion and encouragement of accessory dwelling units on single-family home properties. It will go into effect on October 1st, 2026. What are you or your city doing to accommodate this new law and assist the gentle density housing options as a way to help the housing crisis in Maryland? Mayor Edding, how about the town of Bel Air?
The town of Bel Air already has an accessory dwelling unit set of laws, so we're going to have to make some minor adjustments. I think our accessory dwelling units are permitted, but it has to be like a caretaker or a relative. And the state law, of course, doesn't put any restrictions on it like that. So we'll be doing just some minor adjustments. The bigger picture on the accessory dwelling units is this is another sort of one-size-fits-all thing from the state of Maryland. You have to permit an accessory dwelling unit in any single-family neighborhood. So if you purchased your single-family home in a community that's all single-family homes, you no longer live in one. If your HOA says you can only have one home per lot, the state doesn't care. You can now put a second one on there. So if you paid for the HOA with the tennis courts and the swimming pool and, one 3,000 square foot house or whatever it is on a lot, they have so many different rules, that's no longer in effect. My problem with this is it's chipping away again at the local jurisdictions and what they can do. I live in a single family home on a 0.2 of an acre lot. It's a 2,000 square foot home. I can now put up a 1,500 square foot accessory dwelling unit. That makes no sense. That makes no sense in my neighborhood, and the density in my neighborhood, it's probably about half townhouses and half single families, more or less. That would hugely change the nature of the neighborhood and what our little neighborhood streets are going to look like if you increase the traffic by that much. I don't think everybody's going to do it. I'm not sure anybody's going to do it. But that's the first problem I have. Maryland is a Dillon's Rule state, which means that it's a fundamental law that we get our powers from the state. And so if the state takes away our power, we have none. When they chip away with it with things like accessory dwelling units, we now have to allow them in no matter what the square footage of the lot is. Does that make any sense? I just think they're doing the one size fits all from Annapolis, and it doesn't necessarily make sense in the local jurisdictions. They could leave it to the locals to figure this out and see what works.
Great.
And I also think it impinges on the contractual rights that people have bought their house with their HOA that says, it has to be a 3,000 square foot house, not one that's 75% of that, and that it's one house per lot. So I don't, I'm not sure they can even do that, but we don't have any taxpayer dollars to tilt at that windmill.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Martin, any thoughts on accessory dwellings?
We jump up to number 9 since I left?
Yes.
We did.
Okay. Harford Grace passed an ordinance in 2022, I think it was Ordinance 1186, that dealt with accessory dwelling units. So basically, the lot owner must occupy one of the 2 dwellings on the lot in Harford Grace to have one. Attached ADUs cannot exceed 1,200 square feet. Detached ADUs are limited to at least 50% of the primary dwelling square footage and 10% of the total area. And or 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. But I think the new state law takes it from 50% to 75%. So I think we just have to realign our ordinance. But talking about, I mean, in some places it makes sense. You know, Harvard Grace is very eclectic, and just a reminder for those who tune into last year's episode here, I say this all the time, like, we did not have a zoning law, any zoning laws in Harvard Grace until 1982. Ever. I mean, we're not
just
Columbia,
amazing.
Maryland. You know what I mean? So, and, you know, the stories from the old timers that were on council back then, it was like, you want to talk about political death. I mean, it was a lot of people. We have a park in Harvard Grace named Jean Roberts Park, and the reason why they named the park after her is because she was one of the people that gave up her political career to vote for planning, you know, a zoning law. You know, unfortunately, the nice lady died of cancer a couple years later, but everyone was like, the poor lady, I mean, she stood her ground and she voted for zoning laws in the city of Harvard Grace. And it's like panhandle lots and these alley lots. Well, we don't call them alleys anymore, we call them lanes. I mean, but it's like, so Harvard Grace is very eclectic only for that reason. We're a historic city where nobody cared how close you built your house next to another house and things like that. And then slap, in 1982, you got these zoning laws. So there are some backyards in Harvard Grace that you'll never even know. I mean, some of the properties in Harvard Grace are huge. I mean, you look at these houses right up front on Union Avenue, and then you'll go, you know, on Lodge Lane behind it, and it's like, wow, that house is big. No problem. ADUs, perfect match. Some areas it doesn't fit so well. However, with that said, so remember when I was telling earlier that when you build a new house in Harvard Grace, you have to pay hookup fee, capital cost recovery, it's $25,000 to tap into the city service? Well, there's a second thing that can trigger that. It's called fixture count. So the average home, and forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head what the fixture number, but there's a set number of fixtures for a house. Now, a sink might count as X amount of fixtures, a dishwasher might be 3 fixture units, a hot water heater might be 3 fixture units, whatever, a bathtub could be 4 fixture units, but there's a fixture count formula. Harford County uses the same thing. But a lot of people come into City Hall and they get a permit to add an ADU for, you know, mom that wants to move in and stuff like that. And once they find out, I mean, it doesn't naturally automatically trigger a capital cost recovery, but in most cases, when they add an ADU, they're going to put the whole thing in there: hot water heater, dishwasher, bathtub, you know, all that stuff, clothes dryer, clothes washer. It usually you exceed your original house's fixture allocation. And boom, when we tell the citizen getting the permit, that's $25,000, we're like, ooh, let me rethink this ADU a little bit. Now, look, I'm not bragging about it. I'm sorry about the $25,000. I told you earlier, we have to do that. It's formulated based on our debt service for the wastewater treatment plant. However, why do we do that? You know, it's one of those things like, man, really should we do that? But the point is, we have to know how much water is being used on our system. I mean, we have to let Aberdeen know that. You know, so what if we only count houses that are being built traditionally? You know, break the ground, shovel houses, you know, new house in Bullard Rock, new house in Greenway Farms. But what if all of a sudden there's like, you know, 40 ADUs a year being built, 40 more bathtubs, you know, 40 more dishwashers and hot water heaters that we don't know about drawing on our system? You see what I'm saying? And before we know, we're like, oh my God, Mayor McGrady, I don't know why we can't give you 900,000 gallons of water anymore. So the reason why we have to do that, when you come and get permitted for ADUs, we have to know the burden on our water system. And if you exceed a certain threshold, it'll trigger another capital cost recovery, if that makes sense to you. So, you know, the good news and the bad news is, you know, we support ADUs, and in some places it makes sense, some places it doesn't, but a lot of people walked in and walked out and decided not to do the ADU because of the $25,000 capital cost recovery fee.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I wonder if that could be on a fractional basis. Like if they were only adding 3 total fixtures for a granny, you know, finishing the basement. I wonder if it could be a fraction of one.
Yeah, I mean, so when we go out to inspect, I mean, it depends. Like, again, I don't know the, every single family house is allocated a set amount of fixtures. Most of them are under that threshold. But if it's a full-blown ADU, it usually will exceed it. But if you're just adding something on that, you know, maybe just has a bathroom, you know, full bath, but they don't have a clothes wash machine, they don't have a dishwasher machine, and we go out and inspect it, And, we didn't see that they covered up the hook. A lot of times they try to do that. They're like, oh, no, there's nothing going on here. And they put wallpaper over it, and then we inspect it, and they lift the wallpaper up. But, like, if we know for a fact it's just a very simple living area, well, it probably won't trigger, a capital cost recovery. But it is what it is. And it's not because the city's money hungry. It's just because at the end of the day, like I said, we have to know how much draws on our system. Because an ADU basically is another house sometimes,
Sure. Mr. McGrady, any thoughts on ADUs?
Back to the original question, it was about accessory dwelling units, to make sure the audience understands what we're talking about. If there is a permitted use on one piece of the property, could be a shop, so a commercial use, could be a residential use like a single-family dwelling or a duplex or an apartment building. An ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, is an additional unit in addition to the original one. So it could be the garage of your mom's house. You get a sewer line installed, or you finish the garage into a place for your aunt to stay after she got sick and needs somewhere else to stay. That's an accessory dwelling unit. If you have an existing single-family dwelling and you build an addition on the back that's not attached, that's an accessory dwelling unit if somebody lives there, if you rent it to somebody else. So we're talking about a place for somebody to live that's not the primary use of the property. So the accessory is not to the primary, and the dwelling is the place where somebody lives, so ADU.
The question, you want the question?
No, I got it. It's good.
Okay.
So the accessory dwelling units are a tool to increase, per the question, gentle density in places where we already have existing infrastructure. Aberdeen has something like 80 miles of underground pipes, water lines, and sewer lines. We've got a similar wastewater treatment plant that was improved in 2011 to the you can allegedly drink it standard that no one has tried. And so, in my mind, it makes sense for us to add as many users to our system as we can to maximize the use of our system. So right now, if you envision, we have 1 million gallons of extra capacity at our wastewater treatment plant. 1 million gallons a day of capacity at our wastewater treatment plant that is being unutilized. So I'm not collecting revenue from that, and the capacity exists. So I want to use up to 90% of that total capacity so that I'm collecting revenue on the existing infrastructure in the ground before it wears out and it has to be replaced. A gentle way to add that density is where in the Hillcrest subdivision or the Ramsgate subdivision of the city of Aberdeen, where there's an 1.5 acre lot with a 1,800 square foot single family dwelling on it that has 200 feet of road frontage, is to add, either subdivide and add additional single family dwellings there, or add accessory dwellings so that there's more people, more individuals sharing the cost of that underground pipe. So that pipe underground from the driveway to the end of the property is 200 feet. A 8-inch sewer line in the ground that's 200 feet long costs $350 a linear foot to install and own. Okay, so I'm trying to share the cost of that underground utility over the property. So theoretically, if there's 6 people paying for that cost instead of one entity paying for that cost, ultimately it falls on the city of Aberdeen to replace it, to pave it, to build the sidewalk, to take care of the curb. And the more we can spread the cost around while maintaining the character of the neighborhood. Okay, this is an important thing for folks to feel like you're not imposing on the nature of their neighborhood. That's why the nature of the name gentle density comes into play. It's not imposing 87 units next to the single family dwelling. It's saying we're going to add density here in order to be able to get more people to experience what we love in our community and bring more people in to be a part of that. If we can do that in a way that doesn't change the nature of developments over, not in 1 year, over a 20-year period. So I subscribe to this 501c3 not-for-profit organization called Strong Towns, and one of the philosophies is this incremental change in a neighborhood. So incrementally over time, somebody should be able to leave the neighborhood and come back and 10 years still recognize the neighborhood, even stuff is new. Even though there's new stuff there, the neighborhood has not changed in character. And if we have that kind of framework in how we look at these kinds of things, allowing, what I think we're going to do in Aberdeen is we're going to allow by rights to change the next increment of development. So if there's a single family dwelling, the next property over can be 2 times that density. So it can be a duplex without changing the character of the neighborhood, so that we can get more people to share in the cost. We can make our community more lovely with more people who want to live here. We can contribute towards solving the affordability crisis that we're all dealing with, and do it incrementally without changing any specific neighborhood by dumping 100 units in the corner of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last question. If the Harford County Association of Realtors were to conduct a poll on housing in Harford County, what housing questions would you like to see included? This would be a poll to Harford County citizens.
Wow. Mayor Martin, what do you got?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to start with Mayor Edding.
Oh, she gets to start everything today. What is this?
Ladies first. That's the rule. All right. I would like to know from the citizens what size and type of house they're looking for and what amenities they'd like to see in town or in their neighborhood. I have children who have single-family homes. Not everybody wants a single-family home. Some people don't want the maintenance of mowing the grass. Some people that are empty nesters. So I want to know what do the beginners want. All I see being built in Harford County as far as residential, and I know there's like 4 lots on Linwood that the church sold, and those houses are large houses with a big price tag. I think I want to say $700,000 and they're over $1 million. Okay, there you go. So, and I see these price points like, starting at 800, starting at 700. I know that doesn't include like the granite countertop and the hardwood floor. So you're talking some really big money. I see no homes being built for what I call the beginners, right? I started out it was a row house because it was in Baltimore City. So it's a townhouse. It's more expensive and it's in the county. So we started out there. And that's where a lot of people start. First, it was an apartment, right? People get out of college. They're not sure where they're going to be. They start off in an apartment. Great. We need housing to fit everybody wherever they are in their season of life, so to speak. We have lots of apartments. We have over 300 apartments coming online just in town in the next couple of years. 87 at Hickory Flats, 249 at the mall, and 30 at Standard on Bond. So that is great for those people that want to live in an apartment. But for the people who say, okay, here's where I'm going to live. I want to live in Harford County. I want to raise my kids here. I want to send my kids to school here. Where are the beginner houses? Where are the townhouses that are affordable? I don't see any at all. I mean, even there's none being built, that's for sure. So I want to know what the beginners want. I want to know, are they interested in a townhouse? Do they want a single family? And then there's the people that, I call them the move-up people. We went from a townhouse to a single-family home. That's what you do. You have a couple of kids, the house is too small, you want some grass for them to play on. But not everybody wants that either. Some people want, kids in a townhouse, and that is great. And then there's the empty nesters. Like, what are they looking for? I personally am an empty nester, and I'm staying in my house until they, the bitter end. I have lived in a townhouse. I have been in an apartment. I don't like sharing common walls. I don't like the noise from other people, the cooking smells. I had one complaint from somebody who didn't live in the county, who lived in a condo, and they were complaining about the smell of cannabis. So, the shared walls is something I don't want to buy into, but a lot of people do. My mother-in-law she's almost 92 years old. And until very recently, she lived on her own in a condo because she didn't have to do too much, right? Only the paint in was hers, and the rest of it somebody else took care of. So it's perfect for somebody at some point in their life. I want to know, what are people looking for? And I'd like to know from not just the citizens, but the developers, like, where's the starter houses? I mean, even in Howard Park, which I'd say is one of our more affordable communities, they're single-family homes. They're built in like the 50s. They usually don't have garages. They might have a carport. Some people put on garages. And they're over $400,000. Yeah, it is, I know. Well, I don't know how anything is going to, affordable housing is like my pain point here, because everything that I see that's coming from Annapolis, to me, is encouraging apartments. And there's nothing wrong with apartments, but to me, it's not the stepping stone to financial security or intergenerational wealth or anything else. Apartment rent is higher than any mortgage I've ever paid. It's like close to $2,000 a month. And then people can't get ahead and save any money. So I just don't see how any of this is going to result in affordable housing because of the cost of the land, the cost of the labor to put the house up, the cost of the materials for the house. I don't see that what they're doing is going to help. The other problem that we've had is everybody had that low interest rate, and now we have a interest rate that's very much higher, although low historically, but.
Very good. Thank you. Mayor Martin, any thoughts on questions for the citizens?
I think Mayor Edding had a lot of good points, and I think the one that I just want to underscore would be, as a city, we're not responsible for the actual product of the house ultimately, but I mean, the outlay of the neighborhood and the style of home, sure, but I mean, the product of the house and ultimately what the purchaser wants is between them and their builder. But as the mayor of the city of Harford Grace, I always want to know what it is that people look for when they move to my city. Like, what is it? And I ask this question to everybody that says, "Hi, Mayor, I'm so and so. We moved here from Falston 3 months ago." First thing I ever say was, well, when I ask them, "Well, where do you live?" I'm curious to know if they bought downtown, in historic Harford Grace, or if they built a newer home or bought a newer home. But I always say, what brought you here? What brought you to Harford Grace? And, because those are the things you want to keep focusing on. If it's, a walkable community, outdoors, access to the water, maybe they own a boat. Maybe they like all the events. And whatever they tell you is what helps you guide as a mayor. So it's like, that's important stuff to know is as people buy homes, and I know everyone in this room, you asked that question too. What made you choose to live in Churchville? What made you choose to live in Forest Hill? And as Harford Grace mayor, I always ask that question. Why? Thank you so much for choosing Harford Grace. What made you want to move here? And they're very happy to tell you. And it's good information to have. So,
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Edding did a great job.
Thank you. Mayor McGrady?
So I'm a nerd. I studied finance and economics in school, and economics basically is psychology for finance kids. So the idea is, how do people make decisions? Psychology tied into decision-making is economics. A problem that the government has often is thinking that what you see is what people are desiring, okay? They think that because things are the way they are, that's what people want. Famously, Steve Jobs said, if, terribly paraphrasing here, but if I built what people said they wanted, then it wouldn't be the iPhone, right? It would be, if you remember what phones were like before the iPhone, it was the flip phone with the big clunky buttons, or it was the brick phone, and the iPhone was a novel thing. It was all screen. I remember when it came out, 2006. I was like, wow, this is a really cool thing. A challenge with asking people what they want is you don't really understand what it is that they're controlling for, because psychologically speaking, values are subjective. Every individual you speak to has a different idea of what's important to them. I think that looking forward, so the question was, what question would I add to the survey? I don't have a good question for the survey because every individual has a different priority. And so if we're able to communicate with people, it all comes down to how can we make our community more lovely for the things that matter to you. And I think the biggest deficiency that we have socially as a county, as a region, as a people in America, let's be real, is that we put most everything else over top of the things that are important, like building a community that's strong with people who love you and are around you, whether it's in our faith community or otherwise. And I think that a lot of people would live in a hole-in-the-wall 400 square foot place if it was in a community of people they love. And we can demonstrate this because we ship our kids away to live in dorms with no air conditioning, and they love it, and it's the best experience of their life because they're with people that they love. And I think that that's an example that we need to think about, is we don't need to build the 7,000 square foot McMansion. What we need is places where people can interact with people whom they love, and the more we can encourage that, the better our collective community building operations will go. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are now at the conclusion of our program. I would like to thank the Mayor, Patrick McGrady, for the venue again. Thank you very much. The Mayor of Bel Air, Ms. Paula Edding, and the Mayor of Harford Grace, Bill Martin. Thank you for attending and giving us your thoughts, for all their hard work on behalf of their constituents, and for being here today. I would also like to thank Veronica Rollicutt, our CEO, and Jessica Brock, our stop person there, our Government Affairs Director for all the hard work they have put into this, putting this event together. Harford TV for airing this event for our residents, and once again, thank you to all for joining us today. We wish you all a safe and happy summer.
Thank you, Ed. Good work.
Thank you.